Are you a new YouTuber looking to get better at making videos? Well, so am I. In today's video, I hope we're going to be learning more about cameras, but specifically, what's the best camera to purchase under $1,000? To learn more about cameras, I think our best source is YouTube. So we're going to be watching a couple videos together, well actually a few, just to go through and see what our best option is for a camera that's under $1,000. Before we start watching these videos, I do want to let you know what I am looking for personally. Obviously, my number one thing is high definition, great quality videos. So when I am recording videos, you guys can enjoy a really good quality video. The second thing is I do want the camera to be able to take really good photos as well. I do have an Instagram, so that's important. If you like, please follow me. I'll put a link right here if I can, if I know how to. All right, well, let's start with the first video. Best YouTube camera under $1,000. And as we can see, there's a bunch of videos. I've actually seen a few already, so it's very helpful. I know this one is really helpful. They go through a couple of different features, a lot of different features. They kind of compare the M50, which is the Canon, against the Sony ZV. This is about a year old. So let me just play some of this stuff here a little bit, and then we'll move forward.
When it comes to finding the perfect camera for creating content, whether that's YouTube videos or social media, podcasts, or even live streaming, the Canon M50 and the Sony ZV-E10 are incredible. That's why
And that's what we're looking for, right? Best for streaming, but also, for myself, I need those photos to be really high quality.
be putting these cameras head to head to see the similarities and differences so that you know which one that you should buy for the content you'll be creating. Let's go. Both the Canon M50 / the Canon M50 Mark II and the Sony ZV-E10 are crop censored cameras, so you're gonna get very similar images out of them when it comes to blurry background and low light capabilities. Both cameras have interchangeable lenses, so you can upgrade the lenses as you own them over time, or you can just buy the body of each camera and then get a lens that you truly need and want to get going with. And one of my favorites for either one of these cameras is the Sigma 16mm lens, a nice medium wide lens, but for talking head YouTube videos produces a really cool crispy look. Both cameras are mirrorless, which really makes them able to be very small, compact cameras, easy to carry around or put into a bag. I would say the Sony ZV-E10, because it doesn't have a viewfinder at the top, it is a little bit smaller, whereas the Canon M50, especially for photography, having that viewfinder could be really nice. They both have a mic.
See, looking at these two, obviously having a small camera is really nice, but if it doesn't have the, what is it called? Pathfinder? I don't know what it's called. The thing on top so you can look through to take photos. See how much I know about cameras, but I would prefer that, when you are taking a photo, I think it's a little easier to snap a photo if you're taking a photo as well.
Input, so if you wanted to add a separate mic, whether that be a shotgun mic or maybe a lavalier mic, you can do so by plugging it into them. Now, it is cool that the Sony ZV-E10 has a headphone jack, which means you can monitor your audio. So if you wanted to do some audio tests, it's a little bit easier to do that in real time. Nonetheless, being able to upgrade the audio quality coming from each camera with an external mic is a great option for creating videos. They both have micro HDMI out, so if you want to live stream or use an external monitor, you can. I would say, however, the M50 Mark I does not have a clean HDMI, so you'll see all the data from the camera, whereas the M50 Mark II has a clean HDMI out, so it's good for live streaming. But I would say when it comes to what's easier to live stream with, the Sony ZV-E10 is nice because you can actually live stream with just a USB cable and no special software, which makes...
See, that's pretty cool. I don't plan on doing any streaming right now, but who knows down the road. But it looks like the Sony is a lot better when it comes to streaming, so that's a plus there.
Makes it a very easy camera to use for live streaming. Both cameras have incredible autofocus, so you never have to worry about something being in or out of focus, especially yourself. And speaking of yourself, if you are filming yourself, both cameras have a flip out articulating screen so you can see yourself when you are filming.
That's another very important thing. I intend to do these YouTube vlog style type of things, videos. So it's always nice to be able to see yourself and, be able to record at the same time. I think it's very helpful.
or if you're shooting at various angles that will require you to change the angle of the screen, you can do so. And they're also both touch screens, so if you want to just tap and focus on something, you could do so with both cameras. Both cameras have 24 megapixels comes to taking photos, and so you're gonna get very similar photography performance out of each of these cameras. As far as price goes, the Sony is $800 with the kit lens, or $700 for just the body, matching the same price as the Canon M50 Mark II with the kit lens. However, it is important to note that you can go used, especially with the Canon M50 Mark I, which is about $50 cheaper at retail, but because it's older, you can also get it used as well and get a good deal that way. Oh yeah, and for the ladies, both cameras come in white as well if you want to get a white camera and look all
Why is white just for the ladies? That's kind of funny.
all cute and stuff. Fellas, if you want a white camera, you can get one too, but both cameras do come in white. Now, for the differences, let's talk image quality for video. Both cameras shoot 4K video. However, the Canon M50 isn't a true 4K camera because when you put it in 4K, you lose your autofocus capabilities as well as it crops in a ton. And so it's very unrealistic to use the Canon M50 as a 4K.
That's a huge drawback for me. I think 4K is significantly better than just 1080. So I think regarding that, you know, I would much rather have the Sony, it looks like, regarding the quality of it. But let's keep going.
Camera. The Sony ZV-E10 shoots 4K up to 30 frames per second, and it is a true 4K. There's no crop, the autofocus is there, and it's an incredible 4K camera. You can rely on the 4K when it comes to the Sony ZV-E10. And so when it comes to video quality, the Sony ZV-E10 murders the Canon M50 simply because the 4K image quality is so dang crispy. Now, maybe you don't have the right computer or laptops to be able to handle.
Well, there's that competition. I mean, one of the big things for me is to be able to have, you know, really good quality on my videos. So if this guy is saying the Sony quality kills a Canon M50, then I much rather prefer the Sony.
You know, editing in 4K. Maybe that's one reason why you would want the Canon. The video file sizes are a little bit smaller and easier to work with when it comes to the Canon M50. And so if you have an older computer or laptop, maybe you'll want the Canon M50 simply because it's easier to work with when it comes to editing video. When it comes to record limits, the Sony ZV-E10 does not have a record limit. The Canon M50 has a 30-minute record limit, which is pretty standard for most cameras nowadays. If you're gonna be doing anything that may exceed the 30-minute mark, maybe it be long talks, video podcasting, or maybe even just filming videos like this, but you just want to hit record once, the Sony ZV-E10 is the winner when it comes in this arena because you don't have to worry about anything. And you can also buy a power adapter to get over the battery issue because you can use this power adapter to plug straight into a wall outlet and then never have to worry about your battery power and just get a nice size SD card and record for a really long time. Now let's talk about image stabilization because maybe you want to do some vlogs or you want to do lifestyle type of content where you walk around and stuff. The Canon M50 does perform a little bit better when it comes to that because there's a lot of jarring when it comes to the Sony ZV-E10. I can get very technical and explain why, but just know that the image stabilization out of the Canon M50 is better than the Sony ZV-E10. When it comes to which camera is better for beginners, maybe this is one of your first cameras you'll be purchasing. I want to say both of them are fairly easy to use straight out of the box. However, I think for how simple Sony made the button layouts and things like that on the Sony ZV-E10, it is an easier camera to use. Which camera is the best value and the camera that you should buy? Hands down, the Sony ZV-E10 is just the better camera. Whether it's photography or YouTube videos or maybe even vertical social media videos and things like that, the Sony ZV-E10 is just such an easy camera to use and looks incredible. I think the Canon M50 is easy to use, but because of the Sony ZV-E10, it doesn't look as incredible. And when you really boil down the price point, the value you're getting out of the Sony ZV-E10, I believe is much more better. And you always got to consider future-proofing yourself. And so if you're gonna make a camera investment, make one that you know will last you years and years on end. Because the Canon M50 really only shines in 1080, it's kind of outdating itself.
All right, well, there you have it. According to this first video that we just saw, I know I kind of showed a lot of this video, but I think it's really important to hear the different features and what each of these cameras has to offer. It seems like these two are pretty big in the beginning. zone. There's a couple of other videos, but I'm just going to show the conclusion of them so they kind of give us an idea or their opinion of which one they think is better. But obviously for my case, listening to this first video, Canon, you know, it seems like a good choice. Obviously big thing that, you know, I said at the beginning is quality, you know, 4K. I really wanted to have an excellent quality when I'm recording these videos. So if it's not a true, it doesn't really record 4K at all. And I think they mentioned that it crops or something 4K, but it seems like the Sony one does have a real straight up 4K, which is something that I much rather see. I mean, the only drawback to the Sony one is it doesn't have the, whatever it's called, you can't see through it to take a photo. So besides that, you know, Sony's looking really good right now. So I'm gonna switch off this and go to another video for us. Again, I'm just gonna go through the conclusion, so it'll be a little quicker.
Okay, our first camera in the low budget category is the Sony ZV-E10. That's a camera that
Again, he's gonna just talk about the Sony ZV-E10 a little bit more, and then he's got a couple of other options as well.
I think is most interesting to most people, and it comes at $698 or $798 with a kit lens, what I can actually recommend. I will come to in a second why. And the advantages of the ZV-E10 is clearly the Sony autofocus. It's really good. It never really loses your face, so it's great for vlogging, especially in general content.
So to sum it up, you know, you see the good, the bad right there in front of you. Pretty good camera as well. He agrees, you know, the 4K is amazing.
Big problem with this camera though is the bad rolling shutter performance. Rolling shutter means that if you move the camera around, especially to the sides, that you oftentimes see bending lines there. That looks pretty ugly. This is actually why I personally only use the ZV-E10 for 3 weeks.
I only use it for 3 weeks. But I mean, I don't think I'll be doing all of that. You know, I'm just gonna be doing stationary, so I don't think that's a huge turnoff for me.
And the next camera worth mentioning here is the Nikon Z30. I didn't use it by myself, but it
Nikon Z30, that's the first time I'm hearing about that. Let's see if it's any good.
looks really promising from what I've seen, and it is also in the same price range at $657 body only, $797 for the body and the kit lens 16-50. And specs wise, it's overall very similar to the ZV-E10. It is also a 4K camera, 4K 30 frames per second, also 1080 up to 120 frames per second for slow motion. But it has a few advantages, and that's at first that the rolling shutter performance looks a lot better on the Z30, at least from what I could see in all those reviews. So I would prefer this camera over the ZV-E10. And it also doesn't have a crop with its electronic image stabilization. I don't understand how they do it, if they use a slightly bigger sensor or something, some sort of magic there, but it doesn't have a crop, and that is a hell of a difference because you can actually use your 16mm lens at 16mm without being too close, what makes this camera a bit better for vlogging. Now, when it comes to autofocusing, Nikon generally has a little bit weaker autofocus as Sony, but from what I've seen on this camera, it is also spot on. I never saw any review where the focus was hunting or where everyone complained about the autofocus. And from the performance of Nikon cameras that I've seen on other people in reality and what other people told me, they are generally good cameras, so I assume that these reviews are right there and that you don't have to worry about the autofocus. But if you want to be 100% safe that your autofocus is good, you would rather go for the Sony. However, I generally think that the Nikon is a little bit better. And our next camera is slightly more expensive. That's the Canon R10.
That one looks really good.
$9 for the body only, then $999 for the kit.
So this Canon R10, $1,000 with the lens. So that's the max I'm willing to go. So let's hear more about this one.
With the 18-45mm lens, and $1,279 for the 18-150mm kit lens. Now, this camera is a little bit more expensive, but it also comes with better features. At first, you cannot only shoot 4K in up to 30 frames per second, you can also shoot 4K in 60 frames per second. Comes with a crop though, but it's not a big issue, to be honest, especially considering the price. And if you want to, you can set this camera to HDR PQ, which gives you more dynamic range. And important here is that it records
No idea what that is.
in 10-bit then, and 10-bit gives you more options in color grading. So if you want to advance your color grading a little bit already while you're still learning everything, that's a great camera to get. However, color grading HDR PQ footage is a bit more difficult. You definitely want to watch some tutorials before you do that, and it's also great for content creators that have to film themselves a lot. What I also like about the Canon R10 is that it has a viewfinder, so the body design is generally more hybrid oriented. It's great for photography and videography. Both the Nikon and the Sony ZV-E10 that I mentioned before are cameras that don't have a viewfinder, so they are generally more video oriented. You can also shoot photos with those cameras, it's just not as much fun as with the Canon R10. And when it comes to
so that's really, really important. I mean, this one, it seems like it has it all, right? It's obviously it's a little more expensive, but it has a 4K capacity. It has the finder or whatever. It takes better photos. So it seems like this is like a next tier up for $200 more.
downsides, the only one that I can really see on the Canon R10 here is that the lens options are quite limited right now. If you want to use certain lenses, especially wider angle lenses for vlogging, then you would have to buy an EF to RF adapter and use all the Canon EF lenses on the R10, which generally works good. Even the autofocusing, etc., doesn't have any issues there. And this year I would actually mention 4 cameras in this category because it's really difficult otherwise. So the first one here is the Fujifilm X-S10, which comes at $999, a little bit more expensive, but the Fujifilm X-S10 also has pretty big advantages, and the biggest is
it weird that I've never heard of this brand before?
that it is the only camera in that price range that features an IBIS. This is sensor stabilization, so the sensor moves around and compensates for your shake, and that can actually be really helpful, especially if you want to vlog. And aside from that, it is also a 4K 30 frames per second camera, but you can also shoot in full HD of up to 240 frames per second. The big disadvantage of this camera though is that the autofocus is definitely weaker than all the other cameras here that I've mentioned. Now there are a few other cameras that I want to mention here, but that I would not necessarily recommend, and that is at first, if you're really on a really low budget, the Canon M50. It comes, I think, at $500 or $600, something like that, and this camera features decent video overall if you really want to get started and you're on a budget, but it's not great. Like, it has a huge 4K crop, so it's more like a 1080p camera. You can't really shoot 4K with it. And to be honest, I think now in 2022 or 2023, we are already over 1080p. I think a camera should have 4K then, but yeah. Aside from that, if autofocusing is also not really an issue for you, if you're mostly behind the camera and you use manual focus, or you just lock the focus somewhere and leave it wherever it is, then you might also look into Panasonic cameras, especially the G85, G95, and G9, because all of those cameras have really good looking video straight out of camera, and they have the best sensor stabilization in the business. So if you want to get stable shots straight out of your hand, this is the way to go.
All right, well, that's a lot of information we just got from him, but you know, he mentioned the Canon M50 again. It seems like it's a good option if you really want to, you know, if you have a lot lower budget, you know, $600 or whatnot. You know, from this, you know, the Fujifilm that they just mentioned, like I said, I've never really heard of that company. It sounds like they're really good, but I'm always a little iffy when it comes to certain brands that I'm not used to, that I don't know very well. Obviously, Canon, Sony are huge, and I know them very well. So that's why I've been really focused on those two companies. Sony, obviously, we mentioned here again, great camera. Now, the other camera that sounds really appealing, like I said earlier, is the Canon EOS R10. That looks really interesting. So I'm going to play a couple of more quick things, of summaries of other people's opinion, and then I'll let you know if I made a decision on the camera or not. This guy is biased, so it's kind of funny.
Summarize all this by giving you my biased opinion as a Canon user. If you ask me, the Canon F50 is still the best beginner camera out there. When you start to tally it all up, those beautiful Canon colors, the ease of use with the ability to navigate through all your settings just by touching the screen, and not to mention the M50 is just a little bit cheaper than the Sony ZV-E10. Although it's not by much, but it's still enough to where you can get an extra lens or something like that with that little bit of money that you're gonna save. Now, the difference between the Canon M50 and the M50 Mark II is marginal. It's a very small price difference, and the only advantage that the Mark II has over the original M50 is that it's easier to live stream with. And I would say, if you're inclined towards the Canon and what's holding you back is the fact that it doesn't have autofocus in 4K, it has an extreme crop, and it doesn't offer 120 frames per second, then in that case, you may want to seriously consider the Canon M6 Mark II, because that's another kind of entry-level camera which has all those features.
Okay, so that's another quick video it kind of pretty much says the similar story. It's, you know, it depends on what you like, what you prefer, what you need. He's a little biased about his Canon, so he loves a Canon. So yeah. Well, that was a lot of information, a lot of different cameras out there that you can purchase under $1,000. Now, you know, as I said before, huge thing that's very important to me is to have the capability of recording in 4K. And then also being able to take those really nice photos. What's crazy is I actually recorded this whole video before I bought a camera at all. I was using my iPhone, but I lost all of the video because I was trying to edit the videos on my laptop and it just refused to kind of download. So I was using Final Cut Pro, and I didn't have enough storage because it's like a 20-minute video and it just messed up. I couldn't get it to my PC, so I had to record everything all over again. But this time I'm actually recording with the R10. This is the quality. I don't have any special mics or any special lighting at this point, but this is what I have right now. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I will also be uploading another video very soon, just showing the opening of that of the R10. It's pretty amazing. From what I see so far, it has incredible 4K technology in there that makes the picture look wonderful. So, what are your thoughts though? What are you planning on getting? Do you think this was the right decision to get the R10? Please let me know below. Subscribe and like the video. I would really appreciate it. It's going to motivate me to do even more videos. So thank you again.